Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, during the elections, you had some African American leaders and spokespeople actually encouraging black people not to vote, actually downplaying the significance of the election. And you actually had a campaign, a don't vote campaign going on during the election. And now that Donald Trump has been elected president, now that Jeff Sessions is the U.S. Attorney General, we can see how wrong those misleaders were to encourage black people not to vote. Because right now, under Trump, we see that this country is going backwards when it comes to civil rights. And a prime example of that would be this. Under Obama, the Department of Justice aggressively fought to protect voting rights. They fought against a discriminatory voter ID law in Texas, and they prevailed in court. The court found that that law was in fact discriminatory. And once Jeff Sessions became the U.S. Attorney General, he decided that despite the fact that the Justice Department prevailed in that case, despite the fact that there was a finding of discrimination, this man decided to have the Justice Department withdraw from the case. If that doesn't tell you that the Trump administration is going backwards when it comes to civil rights, I don't know what else will. And then we have this recent example involving these consent agreements reached with various police departments around the country. Under Obama, the Department of Justice aggressively fought against discriminatory practices in police departments. They investigated 25 police departments and they actually reached consent agreements with 14 police departments. And now that Jeff Sessions is the U.S. Attorney General, he wants to review those agreements before moving forward. He actually wants to delay a hearing that was scheduled involving the consent decree in Baltimore, involving the Baltimore Police Department. He wants to hold back, he wants to delay that hearing by 90 days. And, there is no need to delay these hearings. There's no need to review these consent decrees because these consent decrees were negotiated, carefully negotiated between the parties over an extensive amount of time. Both of the parties had a chance to express their concerns, to have their views heard, and the parties eventually reached agreements. Also, these agreements were reached after the Department of Justice conducted thorough investigations in those various jurisdictions, and after those investigations uncovered that there were discriminatory patterns and practices in those various police departments like Baltimore. They found that there was a practice of using excessive force in many of those jurisdictions. So despite all of that, this man wants to review these consent decrees. He wants to delay hearings. And by doing so, he is delaying and denying the people in those jurisdictions justice. It's just that plain and simple. That's what's happening. He's not reviewing these consent decrees to improve them or to strengthen them. I am deeply concerned that he is reviewing them to undermine them, because this is, after all, a man who questioned and criticized the effectiveness of using these kind of consent decrees. I'm concerned that this man may be trying to scale back these consent decrees, or even worse, eliminate some of them. This is very troubling. It is a step in the wrong direction. It is a step backwards. And the reason why this is so important is because we cannot depend upon the police to police themselves. We cannot depend upon these police departments to reform themselves. We can't depend on the police who shattered Freddie Gray's neck to police themselves. We can't depend on the police who choked Eric Garner to death to police themselves. We can't trust the police who shot and killed Philando Castile, Sam Dubose, Alton Sterling, and all the countless other black men and women. We can't depend on those police to police themselves. You need to have court orders in place so that we can hold these police accountable and force them to adhere to the agreement. We can't depend on their goodwill. We can't depend on wishes and hopes and prayers and all that kind of stuff to reform these police departments. You need to have orders in place to force them to comply with the law. It's just that plain and simple. There's no substitute for a strong consent decree. That's the bottom line. And, the Trump administration and Jeff Sessions, they claim that they are doing this review in order to promote officer safety and morale while fighting violent crime. And the fact of the matter is, as long as these police departments have discriminatory patterns and practices, that doesn't promote officer safety. It undermines officer safety. We saw what happened in Baltimore when the people rebelled. We saw what happened in Ferguson when the people rebelled. We saw what happened when police in Dallas and elsewhere were shot by people who were protesting against police brutality. So by not moving forward with these agreements, they are making conditions less safe for the police and less safe for the community. Because when the people cannot trust the police, the people will not report crimes the way they need to. They will not report about the drug dealers in the community. They will not report on the violent crimes that occur in the community, thereby making the communities less safe. So that's a very important issue. Now, something else I noticed in this article, the Justice Department emphasized local control, local accountability, and local responsibility for these various agencies. And while I get that on a certain level, the fact of the matter is that sounds to me like states' rights. And that's what those people advocated during the civil rights era, so that these racists could continue to engage in racist practices. That was their call to action, states' rights. When they wanted to segregate black people, when they wanted to humiliate black people, when they wanted to act with impunity, that was the main thing that those people called for, states' rights. And that's what the Justice Department statements sound like. We can't allow this to continue. We need to make our voices heard because this is wrong. They are taking this country backwards. And it's time for us to wake up and realize the importance of the vote. Because if we don't vote, then we don't count, and tyrants and racists and white supremacists will dominate the political system. There will be more Donald Trumps and Jeff Sessions if we don't vote.